Welcome to the Building Materials Sales and Marketing Podcast, presented by Mark Mitchell, a sales and marketing consultant who specializes in helping building materials companies overcome difficult sales problems. Mark is the author of the book Building Materials Channel Marketing and a frequent speaker at industry events.
Hi, this is Mark Mitchell from Wizard Strategy. Thanks again for joining this episode of my podcast. And today we're going to have a lot of fun. A couple weeks ago, I got to go to Blacksburg, Virginia for the first time and to the wonderful offices of Venveo, a great digital marketing agency that focuses on building materials. And they asked me to speak at a workshop they had, a day-long workshop on how building material companies use LinkedIn. And I thought I knew a lot about LinkedIn because I use it a lot and I get a lot of benefit from it. But boy, I learned a lot from the people at Venveo and the other presenters and even the attendees, the companies that attended. I was amazed at the tremendous level of interest that I saw with the companies who took a day out of their busy schedule to come to Blacksburg, Virginia to learn about how to use LinkedIn for their companies. So LinkedIn really is something, but I think it's something that's really misunderstood. We'll get to that here in a minute, but I'd like to introduce my two guests today, Beth Popnikolov. Hello, Beth.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, looking forward to this. And Zach Williams, the president of Venveo.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having us. I am your number one fan. I respond to almost all of your newsletters. And I think you commented and made fun of me and Beth recently because we always read your newsletter on Sundays. And you said, I think you said, Zach, you're my mom because you like everything. And Beth, you're like my dad because you occasionally like some things.
That's about right.
And Beth is also a little bit like my mom because whenever I have a typo or something, she points it out to me. Which is all good. But anyway, I'd like to just start out by talking about LinkedIn in general. So I see there are people in building materials, and maybe we'll just say older people in building materials, who don't see the value of social media or any social media at all. Then there are people who they see LinkedIn as a place that you go to when you've lost your job and, I better clean up my profile and get a new picture up and start seeing who I know to help me find a job. Or it's a place that you go when you're looking to hire somebody. And then there are people that I think really understand how LinkedIn is becoming, to me, the business social media platform. And I see a growing use on literally a weekly basis of more building material salespeople, leadership, marketing people getting more involved on LinkedIn and doing, really doing a great job with it and getting a lot of benefit. And I'd like to get, Beth, what's your take on LinkedIn?
I think if you're viewing LinkedIn as social media only, you're missing out on 98% of its value. To put it in the same category as Facebook or Instagram is really missing the mark of where LinkedIn can deliver to you when it comes to leads and sales and important business connections. I actually would call it something closer to the words that you used, business social media or even business media. The difference is the mindset that people are in. So when I'm on Facebook, I'm in a social mindset. I'm looking for updates from my aunt about my cousins and cat videos and all those types of things. But when I'm on LinkedIn, I'm in a business mindset. I want to see what's happening in my industry. I want to see what thought leaders in our industry are thinking about, who's pushing the envelope, what connections and conversations I should be having around our industry as a whole.
Yeah.
What do you think, Zach?
I tend to think of LinkedIn as a marketing and sales platform, which feels very different than saying social media. Like I think it's a platform that has social media components. And if you can make that mindset shift, because Mark, you mentioned a minute ago, like, I'm on LinkedIn because I want some good content or I want to connect with an old coworker or I need to update my profile because I'm looking for a job. Like all of those things are true, but the best point, like that's just scratching, like just barely touching the surface of what it really can do for you. That's why we had that one workshop, Marcus, is because we're really trying to change the mindset and shift how people view LinkedIn to see that there's so much opportunity for business connection and for sales to happen through the platform.
Yes.
Mark, I'd be curious from your standpoint, like what was there like any aha moments for you or anything like you took away from that event that you said, man, like that really changed my perspective on LinkedIn?
I learned a lot of, I'll use the word techniques of how to use LinkedIn even more effectively. Okay. I've been a big believer, so I didn't get any more reasons to be a big believer other than it was just kind of reinforced as we talked. I think you brought up, Zach, how all of the social media kind of go through a growth or aging, if you will. And that right now Facebook and maybe even YouTube and so the other ones are going through some things where it's a little maybe harder to be effective. They're maybe the way they're trying to make money and so forth. Algorithms are changing, but that right now LinkedIn is pretty wide open. It probably will in a couple of years hit that. But there's two other things I want to share. One is that I get 3 inquiries per week, companies that want to talk about possibly working with me. And one of those comes through LinkedIn. So 1 out of 3 of my inquiries comes through LinkedIn. Now, the majority of those are people that found me on LinkedIn.
How did they find you, Mark? Like, what did they do to discover you? Did you post a piece of content, or are they searching within the platform, trying to find some sort of building materials consultant? Do you have any insight there?
I post a lot of content. So I get in front of a lot of people that are looking for information on building material sales and marketing is one way. Other ones is people refer me. Someone will say, oh, I was on LinkedIn and someone said, you should check out Mark Mitchell. Okay. And they go to LinkedIn instead of my website. Mm-hmm. And it's just it was an eye opener to me that 1/3 of the inquiries are coming from LinkedIn message, not an email, not a phone. All those are very easy to find, not a form on a website, easy to find, but 1/3 come through LinkedIn. The second thing is I've discovered that there are people that I can have somebody's cell phone number, I can have their office phone, I can have their personal email and their business email, and I can call those numbers and leave a voicemail or send emails to those emails. And these people know me and not hear back from them. And that same person, I can send a message on LinkedIn, and within an hour, I will get an answer. So I'll say, hey, I'm going to be at the roofing show next week. Would you have time for coffee? And if I send an email or leave a voicemail, I might not get a response. With this, and then with a LinkedIn message, I do get a response. Now, that isn't 100% of people, but I find there are people who like companies use Slack and other things to kind of help them filter out. I think that there are individuals that use LinkedIn as a way to filter out. Like someone I know on LinkedIn, it may be more relevant than someone who just has my email address.
Well, Zach, you talked about that, didn't you? That's kind of one of the ways that we point to the fact that marketers haven't ruined LinkedIn yet, is that when you get an email, yes, you spend a lot of time in there. Email's certainly not a dead medium, but it's definitely not the level of excitement that you get when you find that you have somebody in your inbox that's personalized. We're not talking about the paid email that everybody hates. But so like an actual human has sent you a message in LinkedIn, it still feels really exciting, kind of like email when everybody used AOL and you were like, you've got mail. Like that used to be exciting.
Yeah, I think about it like when you first got your first cell phone, if you can think back to that moment, when you get like your first phone call, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And now like my family calls me on the phone and I'm like, oh, like I've got to pick up the phone. Like it's like it used to be something you're so excited about. Like just like email, used to be so excited about it. And now it's like become this checkbox, this anxiety producing mechanism that we just abhor in our society. Whereas LinkedIn, it's like there's, to Mark's point, like you get through those gatekeepers because people are still accessible, because people like Beth and I and Mark, who are marketers, like haven't ruined it yet. That accessibility is just one of the biggest reasons why it's working so well right now.
Yes. And I have a number of building material salespeople or even presidents and CEOs of some companies who, when I check in, who use it on a regular basis, and when I check in with them, they're like, oh, Mark, this is a great tool. I can, I know one window salesperson in New England that like he literally tracks how it helps him to get in front of builders and architects and so forth. And he can literally see the results of what happens with it. So, so to me, it really works. The company has a role on LinkedIn and the individual has a role. But as an individual, you'll get the most benefit out of it by doing things yourself and maybe with the support of your company. But it for you to get a benefit out of it, it takes something. There's also I find just another reason why the individual, and that is if you are a regular contributor on LinkedIn, and at some point in the future, you need to find a new job, okay, you're going to be in much better position. I also find that HR managers will go look on social media and see, how active you are. Like, is this person an influencer in the industry, a leader in the industry? You can be a local sales rep and be looked at as a leader and an influencer in the industry by your activity that you do on social media. And we all get afraid of having the picture of the lampshade on our head at a party on Facebook seen by the HR department. But I more want them to see the good side of how smart we look when we're on LinkedIn. I'm an individual and I'm interested in LinkedIn. And so the first place I want to start is my own profile page, and talk to me about your advice there.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of different sections within the profile that you need to be aware of. Obviously you have like your picture on your profile. And as a side note, make sure you have a professional photo. Like, so many people have like either A, no photo, or B, a photo of them at like their, Beth, help me here. Like something
they have pictures, it's either them and their pets or their wedding photo, which I think is very strange.
Yes, yes. And don't get me wrong, like, we care about your pets and we care about your wedding photo.
We do.
We do Facebook. On Facebook. Yes, on Facebook, not on LinkedIn.
Right.
But
unless
your profile
you're a professional bride, in which case it's okay.
Yes. But then the few other areas to think about is like the header image, which is that area right behind your profile photo. This, I think, is right around.
Can we stop just one second? So the first thing we're talking about is we'll call it your headshot, picture of you, right?
That's right.
And so in an ideal world, it is a professional shot. And if you can't go out and get you don't want to invest the money in a professional headshot, you can take even your phone and have someone, stand against a blank wall and have some come in close and just take a nice portrait, nice headshot of you. And then there are always people that, let's say there's people that break the rules that to me it works. And then there's some people that add to it. There is a woman, she's a salesperson for an air and moisture barrier company. And I really liked her headshot because she has a hard hat on and she's out on a muddy job site. And it's kind of like, look, I'm a girl, but don't worry, I'm just as tough as the guys, right? I'll come out on the job site. So I think that you can do some things like that. And then there is a door salesman in, I think, Oregon. He has the craziest photo of him. It's in some crazy costume, right? But it's him. When you meet him, it's him. And so that's his personality and so if how you are is part of your personality, then I'd say, you can think about airing that way to go along. But I see so many, either the worst thing is no photo. And then there are ones that are then there's blurry photos. Like, I didn't even care. I don't care how I present myself to you. There are photos where I really don't know what's going on in the photo, like you're fishing or whatever it is. So I think if like you would have an activity, ideally the activity has something to do with your profession, like on a job site, holding a tool, I don't know, things like that could work. Do you agree?
I agree. Yeah. Something relatively professional. I don't think you need to spend, money on going getting headshots or anything like that. But I do think that something just professional, smile, look at the camera. I
think there's just some people that just don't know how to take a good photograph. And I would tell them, okay, you have a friend that knows how to take photos, right? Ask that friend to take your picture, right? That's, all you got to do. Now, talk about this background so everybody understands. Right behind you is usually this big blue field, and you can also drop a photo in there or an image in there in the background area. Is that what you were talking about, Zach?
Yeah. So there's an area right behind your profile photo. When you go to your own profile page, you're going to see by default, it's a large blue image. It's about 1,500 pixels wide, 400 pixels tall. Most people will leave this default, or they may upload a picture of them in a meeting or a picture of their product or a job site or something like that. And what we would argue is that is the area that you have the most real estate with the most control on this page. And if it is a landing page, not a not just a resume. You have a lot of opportunity to tell a story here about the value you can bring your audience. And one thing that we actually recommend, this is something we went over in our workshop, is to, and you can check out, I think Mark has this on his profile, and Beth, I know I have it on mine. Beth, I can't remember if you have it on yours, but I literally put text. I literally put text on my image, and I just provide a short value proposition right on the image. So if somebody goes there, I'm using more real estate to tell a story than other people may, and it catches people's eye, and they're willing to read it because they go, oh, well, no one else is doing that. Let me quickly read it. So that's a little insider trick or tip, but you'll notice it helps you further customize that page and look even more professional, right?
Now, until I met Zach, I didn't know what a pixel was. So for those of you that are technology challenged, okay? Mm-hmm. My suggestion is look at other people's profiles. Look at Zach's, look at mine, look at Beth's or other people, and look at that big image behind them. And then think about what you would like behind yours. Right? And if you don't know how to size an image or put type on an image, once again, you've got a friend, maybe a teenager. There's people that know how to do it. It's pretty easy. If you don't know how to do it, it can be kind of confounding, I guess. So even if you don't know how to do it, someone that's a friend of yours that knows how to do it, it's easy. Beth and Zach, what do you think about, if I'm going to jump over here to a company? It seems to me that if a company developed some background image or 5 or 6 different versions of it, okay, and just said to all of their employees, if you'd like to, here are some background images that you might use.
That's a great idea.
Absolutely.
Excellent idea.
Yeah. And instead of maybe it's just like one that's all logo, that there's a variety of them that show the product in use or, different things like that. I think that is another way a company could help their employees on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I mean, we have a number of clients that's what they do. They say, hey, here's the one you are using and you've got to use this one. And there's other ones where they give people a little bit of creative license to say, hey, here are a handful. Choose whichever one you think works for you the best. It's a smart way to encourage people to represent the brand well without leaving it up to them to go wild with something that doesn't feel on point,
Yeah. And then also just jumping back to the individual photo, I know I shared this with you when I was at your workshop, but there was a company I was working with that they wanted to really use LinkedIn. So at their sales meeting, they had a professional photographer there whose whole purpose was to take new headshots for all their employees.
Great idea.
And I thought, wow, I thought that was really great. And then back to still here on the company thing. The other thing they did is they had a couple of people from the marketing department to sit with people and help them write their descriptions, profiles, just to help their whole profile, the copy part of it, and provide suggestions. I thought, good idea. But let's keep going through the profile.
And then the next area is what we'll say is the headline. The headline is the main area that essentially right below your name. It's typically what people use to say, hey, this is my title at X company. So I'm sales rep at XYZ brand. And that is okay. That's an okay approach. But we always recommend to think about the profile page from the perspective of the reader. And candidly and frankly, nobody really cares what you do. Beth and I joke all the time, that's the motto of Venveo is nobody cares about you.
Nobody cares about you.
Yeah. And we mean that in a nice way, meaning you've got to tell somebody what matters to them. So if I'm reading about you, what's the value you can bring me? So I think if I go to Mark Mitchell's, for example, he talks about how he can help building material manufacturers grow sales and revenue faster. That's the benefit he brings. He doesn't say I'm a consultant. He says, this is what I do for you. This is what I can bring. And so that headline, really simple, ask yourself in 5 seconds, can I quickly see the value I'm going to get if I connect with you?
Helping builders sell more homes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So a good example would be something like, we use the framework of, we help whoever your audience is achieve or grow or experience whatever type of end result that is through the technology of your brand. So for example, if I sell roofing materials, we help roofing contractors install roofing more quickly and increase profits in the process. And then you can maybe mention your position at the company name. so that you can quickly see, hey, what's the real focus of the organization and how they're helping those who are reaching out.
What other suggestions do you have for the profile page?
The other thing is just looking at the other text that you have, the summary section, which is where you really tell your story about what value you can bring in much deeper context. Mark, if you have show notes, we can include this in there. There's a little bit of a framework we use and that we went over at the workshop. It's really just providing a framework to show empathy and authority and drive people towards that end action, which is a sales conversation. So most people say, hey, this is what I've done at this X, Y, and Z job. Instead, turn it into a sales copy or sales landing page that focuses on, here's what I can do for you. I understand your problem. If you reach out, this is what you can expect from my organization, and tell them how to do that.
I see the biggest mistake most people make is they write it like a resume applying for a job. Like I drive top line sales growth, achieve 40% this, that, whatever, all of these, great story if you're applying for a job. I view right now what the job you're applying for is to get the customer to want to interact with you and buy from you, right? And they don't care about what you achieved for your company. They care about what you can do for them. So when you think about writing that paragraph or so about how you describe yourself, write it about how you help the customer. So think about if I were an architect and you're an architect salesman, I'm reading this, what should that say that makes the architect feel like I really would like to have a meeting with this rep? Okay. Write it that way.
I do think it's a mind switch. It's a perspective switch, how you're treating your LinkedIn profile. Certainly, you probably started on LinkedIn building it out like a glorified resume. But if you're happy at your job and you're not job hunting, then it's time to switch and make it continue to work for you the same way you did when you were job hunting. So if you're in a position that you plan on staying in, how can you make LinkedIn work for you? By making it be one of the main drivers for new connections, new leads, and new sales.
Yes.
And then what changes do you need to make to your profile, to your interactions, to your content accordingly?
Great. Any other, before we move on to, I realize I'm trying to pack 8 hours worth of your wonderful workshop into,
it's not an 8-hour podcast. I thought this was an 8-hour podcast.
No. But any other tips on the profiles before we go on to the next area?
No, I think that hits the main point. Just thinking the biggest shift is just thinking about it as a landing page, not a resume.
Yeah.
If you can do that, it'll really change the perspective of how you create that page. Because the other thing too, Mark, is you mentioned earlier, like people find you on LinkedIn. It's probably because you have really great copy on your page that focuses on building products. Like that goes into the search algorithm,
That's true.
That's true. People don't think about that.
You're right. No, you're right. When I type somebody's name, I'm amazed how many times Google shows me suggests, hey, you might want to look at their LinkedIn profile. But just real briefly, I think you should, go ahead and complete your career, like where you have worked and what you did. So people see the progress of, he started out working at a lumber dealer. Then he, became the store manager. Then he went to, now he's the sales manager for a large distributor. I see the progress or where they came from, right?
Yep.
And then things like education and any other things like that. Just if people are interested, it gives them a sense of a little bit more about who you are. Did you agree with those things?
100%.
Yeah, agree.
Okay. And then one last thing about profiles. What do you think about recommendations, like when people recommend you and that kind of stuff?
Zach is making a face.
Yeah, Zach is making a face like,
I don't think they matter that much right now. Yeah. I think they could matter more in the future. I think if you notice that over time, LinkedIn starts to provide reviews, which they haven't really, they do recommendations like, hey, I recommend this person.
For a skill.
There's no for a skill, but there's no hey, this company or individual, I give them 5 stars.
Yeah, I see.
If that happens, I think that could change things. But recommendations to this point, like my brother recommended me for burrito eating. Like that, you can literally recommend anybody for anything.
Oh, you shouldn't have told me that, Zach.
I know.
Open the can of worms.
the practical joker I am. You shouldn't have let me know that.
I should have. I don't know. I know the cat's out of the bag. Mark is going to go through the entire.
I really wouldn't be surprised though if LinkedIn went the way of reviews, because within the last 6 months, you've seen them when you visit somebody's profile or engage with their content and then visit their profile. They ask you, would you endorse them for these 4 skills? And it's private. It's not being pushed to that person. So you can tell they're doing some beta testing to try to understand how to put those skills to use. Again, I think it also is reflective of the shift that really consumers, or like the users, that's us, have made on how we use the LinkedIn profile platform. It used to be really just the resume, and in that case, endorsing a skill set made sense. But since we're using it more as a marketing and sales platform, endorsing a skill set just doesn't feel like a fit to that so much, but the reviews would. And you can put reviews to an extent. It's like, but it's copy. It's not star ratings. If they could combine those two and then cut us some royalties for that, great idea.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Which they won't. But yeah.
If you have a customer and you're asked that you connected with, and LinkedIn asks if you want to endorse them, okay? And you look and say, what would I legitimately endorse them for? I really think this person has this skill, okay? I think that's a good idea to go ahead and endorse that person. It shows that, you know, they'll see that like you endorse them for a skill set that you think they have. And, you know, everybody likes a little love. You're almost making a face, Beth. So what's your thought?
No, I'm agreeing. Okay. I'm not disagreeing.
Okay. And should we move now? We've talked about how to improve your profile. And I guess the last thing I would say is just make a habit of looking at other people's profiles and look how they describe themselves, look at photos, look at things. And you know, that's another way that I get ideas of how to improve mine. So should we now talk about, okay, so you've got a nice profile, now how to use LinkedIn?
I think it's a great idea.
Yep.
Would the first thing we should talk about be adding connections?
I think the first thing is really thinking about who is your target audience, like who's your ideal customer profile, your ICP is what we'll call it. If you can figure out who you want to do business with, which may sound obvious, or to most people listening, of course, they know who they want to do work with or who they want their customers to be. But if you can understand what motivates and drives those people, like what they think about, it's going to help you not only, number one, find those individuals and connect with them, but also help you in the content that you produce to engage with those individuals on a deeper level. So Mark, for example, you know you're trying to work with CEOs, CMOs, sales executives within building products, right? Yes. So you're researching and trying to find those individuals, but you're also producing content that those individuals would find interesting. So naturally, they're attracted to you as you're also trying to go out and find more of them to engage with and connect with. Am I right?
Yes. My thing is, the first thing you ought to do is, if you haven't been doing this, is every customer that you're currently doing business with, you should, if you haven't, you should be connected with them. Mm-hmm. Because it will, even if they're a great customer of yours, if you're not connected on LinkedIn and they use LinkedIn, you will strengthen the relationship with that customer by doing that. Mm-hmm. And so certainly there's one way of, I'll just call it, using it with current customers. And if you are connected with a current customer and it's their birthday, if they get a promotion, if there's something that their company does, you will know that and can then say happy birthday or congratulations on the promotion that maybe you didn't know about. So that's what I was thinking. The first thing would be just to make sure that you've gotten all of your current business contacts, people. And if I call on a new person, when I leave, I send an email saying, great meeting you. I also go on LinkedIn and send a connection request. And then I think go into okay, now I want to do business with this company. Who are the people? And then how do you add those connections? Is that where you were going, Zach?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, also looking at who are the people that your ideal customer profile are following. So if I'm really interested in, let's say, architects that focus on lead products, who do they see as the influencers in the space? Who do they see as the thought leaders in the industry? Because if I follow them and I engage with them and my target audience sees that I'm following them and engaging with them, they're going to see that I am very current and I understand what's happening in the industry. And it creates rapport and it creates trust. I think on a deeper level, Mark, if I think about those people that interact with you on LinkedIn, for example, I know I keep using you as a reference, like the people that interact with you and see that you are a thought leader, you have great content, and then they're connected to them in some capacity. When you promote an event or something that you're doing, it creates more, what's the word, Beth, here? Groundswell? Is that the right word? Around what Mark is trying to do. There's so much to be said about the influencers within your industry as well as the individuals you're actually trying to connect with.
Yes. there's a type of sales where I'm going to pick a target and go chase them down. And that's one way to do things, right? And then there's kind of a way that you're kind of like casting a net out there, and you certainly have some targets, but there's also people will surprise you that you didn't have on your target list that will come to you and find you and discover you and want to work with you, or at least connect with you. And so I kind of look at it that way. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So Beth, you have any thoughts on adding connections?
I think it's important to add people that you think you'll be able to. So like what you're saying, Mark, your existing customer base, and then who is like this customer base that I'd like to do business with, but also who are you going to be able to have good conversations with? So it shouldn't just be, I'll speak for like how I use it, but it shouldn't just be, these are people that we want to work with. It should also be people that I want to be influenced by, people who are going to provoke thought to keep you sharp, so that it's driving you ahead as an industry leader also, because you can really only be a thought leader in your space if you have other people that are challenging your thoughts. If it's just you out there on the front lines thinking that all of your ideas, I mean you in the universal sense. I obviously don't mean you, Mark, but thinking that all of your ideas are great and brilliant without anybody challenging those ideas or bringing their opinions to the table as well. You need more like an iron sharpens iron type situation, in addition to building out a connection building out a connection pool that can ultimately lead to leads and sales.
Yes. And I think that it's like the salespeople that I see that use LinkedIn just as literally a cold call sales tool. It's so obvious their connection requests and things come through and it kind of, people will say, "Oh, Mark, I see this person on LinkedIn. Would you introduce me?" And usually I'll go, "No." I don't really know you that well, and I'm not, I don't know that your product is that great or whatever. I mean, the people that use it that way. And so I think what we're saying here is this is about, it's a business community. And it's like, when you would join your local home builders association or AIA, you're going to go to the first meeting. You're going to want to get to know people.
Yep.
You're going to take your time and you're going to give them the chance to see that you're a good person. It's more like a networking thing than at least that's how I see it, versus like, I'm going to use this to go find the right guy that I want to go close the deal tomorrow. Is that
Agreed?
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Okay. Let's talk about now. Okay. I've got this LinkedIn profile. I'm building my connections, adding connections. Then one other just tip skips my mind is, there's some people who literally the best way to communicate with them is through LinkedIn. Okay. And if I was using a CRM like Salesforce, I would want to make note of that within the CRM.
Yeah, absolutely.
That, that this is this person prefers, whether it's texting or meetings or phone calls or, whatever information you're putting in there. But I would, if you can tell if the person is an active user, and if they are, I would make note of that in the CRM. Now,
yeah, there's some, I was going to say there's some interesting integrations between, like, let's say Salesforce and LinkedIn. So some of that data you can actually directly integrate into Salesforce, which we're not going to get into because we don't want to bore everybody. No. But there's some good features there.
What should I do on LinkedIn? I'm like, me on Facebook, I'm used to every morning I show a picture of that day's socks. Okay. Or if I, go out to dinner with my lovely wife, maybe I'll take a picture, and I certainly shoot pictures of lots of food, but the LinkedIn's different. Now, what would you two guys advise people the types of things to share or activities to do?
I think one easy thing to do that, Mark, I see you do, Zach, I know you do it, I try to do it, we've got lots of other people we follow that do it as well, is posting some piece of industry relevant news with your opinion or your twist. Give some context. Don't just stick an article up there so people know that you subscribe to the New York Times and feel impressed. But what's the why does it matter to your industry, to your audience set, to your product category, to your competitors? Give a bit of your why and your insights to it. It's such an easy way to be positioned as a thought leader without creating actual content, but also bringing relevant, important news to the feed and making people want to follow you because you're bringing them stuff that they need to know.
To me, I'm a person that says, okay, I would rather see you doing the wrong thing instead of doing nothing. Okay. Mm-hmm. And to me, the wrong thing is everything you share is about your company and your product. That is the wrong thing. But even those people, I applaud that they're doing something. It would be better if they were sharing insightful information, as Beth suggested, about either your product category, the industry. If your product is used in apartments, maybe there's an article about trends in multifamily design or
exactly.
Financing problems or something. And to Beth's point, just add a sentence, add a sentence or two with just your comment. You don't have to write 600-word comment. But don't just put an article up there. It could even say, this is good news, or will this help the California housing, or whatever your comment you're going to make, or the labor issue in painting, whatever your comment is. But when you see things like a trade magazine or blogs or newsletters that you read, don't assume everybody else has read the same thing. People, I find people are too busy to read today, and they appreciate it when you share information that you think would be helpful. And it's okay once in a while to talk about, your company and your product, but I kind of like a ratio of maybe 4 times I'm not talking about the company and 1 time I'm talking about the company. Maybe even 9 times I'm not talking about the company. It's probably a little scary for people, but you can be also, though, you can talk about customers. You can share, here was our project, look at this fantastic, congratulations to this architect and GC for this great building they just finished. And they used our windows, because now the GC and the architect are going to see that you called them out, and they're going to appreciate that. Their competitors are going to see that you called them out and go, oh, maybe we should use those windows.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion.
The another one to me is if your company is producing any blog content, articles about deck maintenance or whatever, roof maintenance, or how to inspect a roof or something. Those are also, just because your company shared it doesn't mean that, everybody's read it once again. You can take that same information. So once again, if you're a company, you should be feeding these things out to your salespeople as suggestions for them to share themselves.
That's a great point, Mark. Giving them, hey, post this week, do this. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it just takes a little bit off of their plate if you're actually helping them to foster their community and connections on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Another thing that I do is I'll set up like a Google alert. So if I work for a deck manufacturer, I would set up some alerts about outdoor living or decks, whatever, a couple of just terms like that. And every few days, go just check and see, gee, are there any interesting stories here about decks? And if there are, that's a great place resource to find interesting articles to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great suggestion and a really easy one that's probably underutilized.
Yeah. So you can be finding articles and industry news. You could be recognizing customers is another thing. Like, if a customer posts something, you can like it, you can comment on it, you could share it is another thing to just activity to be doing on LinkedIn would be to, liking, commenting, or sharing things that customers have put up.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Mark. I think something to just be mentioned quickly there is to make sure you're engaging with what other people are doing. You're not just constantly posting your own things and talking about your own things. The same vein it would be if somebody comments on your article or post whatever you've done, to make sure that you're responding and engaging with them, but also going outside. Certainly with existing relationships, existing customers, we all know it's more expensive to get new customers than it is to keep your existing ones. You want to keep them happy, show them that you value the relationship that you've built, but also that you're not just looking for people to talk to you about how great your ideas are that you're posting, but you're engaging with other people about the things that are important to them.
Yes. Yeah, I think that is a great way to look at it, because I do see some of the people that I follow that only talk about their company or their product. Those people also rarely do what you say. They rarely comment, like, or share what somebody else is doing. And so I think sharing helpful information about the industry, as we talked about, because it also says, wow, this person cares. This person is knowledgeable. They're interested in the industry. They're looking at these things and they're sharing them. And it really, I think, sets you apart from everybody else and kind of creates a very, I'll call it favorable digital impression of you to your customers. It also keeps you in touch. If you see a customer once a year, which happens more and more today, you can stay in touch with them now throughout the year. It isn't like, okay, I'm going to see them at the builder show. You don't actually go call on them, or they're not big enough that you're going to get around once a year. Well, now you can be in touch with them, once a month, once a week, whatever it is, depending, once again, if they are active on LinkedIn and you're active on LinkedIn, that's great. Certain customers that aren't active on LinkedIn, and this is to reach the people that are active on there.
Agreed.
All right. So Zach has had to leave us, and it's just Beth and I now. So Beth,
we're the real brain power here anyway, Mark.
Yeah, now that he's gone, we can say that, right? Yes. I'm trying to think what I'm going to endorse Zach for on LinkedIn now that I know you can make up skills. The other real benefit to me of LinkedIn for an individual is an individual can join groups and a company cannot. And if you go on LinkedIn, you will find a group for just about every type of customer that you can imagine, whether it's architects, home builders, and then it drills down even further. There's like the Young Architects Network. There's architects of New York City, home builders of Connecticut, roofers of Texas, or Dallas. And you can join those groups as an individual. And then it's much easier to connect with the other members. You can contribute. You can read what people are posting, what questions they're asking, what things they're sharing. And I really think that groups is a great resource within LinkedIn. What do you think?
Yeah, groups I would relate that back to our point earlier, which is there's a lot of focus on building out your company's profile, but it's really at the individual level where you're able to make an impact. And I would put groups at the top of that list. I think it's very smart that LinkedIn does not allow companies to join groups. Companies just frankly can't be trusted to deliver value and to take themselves out of it and not just talk about their products and their customer service and on and on. But an individual has individual perspective, has individual expertise to be added there. An important point to be made as if you're active in a group or engaging in a group is those groups will sniff out a salesperson in a heartbeat. So make sure you're there to contribute and further the conversation, not just be like, I have a great solution to that problem and it happens to be my product. Call me at this number. Nobody wants to engage with that guy, right? Like that's not what groups are there for. They're really there to build community. But to your point, Mark, they're really incredible. Absolutely.
Well, and there are, I'll call it active groups, which are good. And then there's groups that there's not much happening. So I'm not saying every group is a great group, so you just go in and type any subject into the search function of LinkedIn. And when it will say, what are you searching for? There's a little drop down. I think you can choose people, companies, and groups. Push groups, put architects, for example, put painting contractors or painters or whatever, and watch what starts popping up. And a number of groups are closed, but that's really, they're looking for people that have a real reason to belong, not just open to anybody. So they'll look at your profile and say, oh, okay, this is a roofing group. He works for a roofing company. Yeah, we'd love to have him be a member. And if you're selling insurance or cars, we probably don't want you as a member. So one other one, Beth, I wanted to ask you was there was some talk at your event about the use of hashtags on LinkedIn as a growing way to have people find things posts that you're putting up and so forth. You have any observations on that?
Yeah, I know that hashtags can feel like something that is like too Twitter focused, or, they're often used like cutesy or something like that. But they should be looked at as more like a filing system or an organization system. And people do search hashtags, and people, especially when they have questions, which that's who you want to talk to, right? Is your potential customer when they have questions. You want to help them answer those questions. So including relevant hashtags on your content will help your content come up when people have questions. They search for hashtags. Additionally, it has a likelihood of getting pushed into somebody's notifications. If you post something and it gets a certain amount of engagement, it will actually be pushed to people's notifications that LinkedIn thinks will be interesting. So people who I don't follow, if they post about hashtag building materials or hashtag e-commerce or things of that nature, LinkedIn will tell me, hey, this person has a post that's trending. You should check it out. So it's a great way to get your profile and your content and ideas pushed even further outside of your direct connections.
So this is back to if you're posting an article, if you're sharing something, if you're putting a post up that you can think about adding a hashtag to the end of it, hashtag roofing, hashtag commercial roofing, hashtag shingles, whatever it would be. And that will help that. You're doing that. One last thing before we end here that I wanted to talk about is some people think about, one of these days I want to start a blog. I want to start my own blog. I want to start sharing my thoughts. And I think LinkedIn has a wonderful tool called Article. So there's a thing it says, you can you click, you'll see it on your page, like write an article. And you can go there and it's literally like a blog post. So if you just want to see if you want to be a writer, that's a great way to start. Just write an article on LinkedIn and put a picture with it or get a stock photo or something. But the main thing is go ahead and write an article and put some hashtags at the end of your article and see how that feels. And it's another thing that there are people that will follow you writing your articles. They'll connect with you. It further says, wow, this person really is insightful and has good advice for how to do things.
Yeah, absolutely. And LinkedIn, like other social media platforms, even though we're advocating it's not strictly social media and should be used differently, they make their money through ad dollars, right? So they are incentivized to keep you on their platform, which means that if you post a native article or an article through the LinkedIn platform versus writing that article someplace else and posting a link to it, you'll get far more eyeballs and actions on the native LinkedIn article platform than you would on what's called a third-party link, simply because people don't have to leave the LinkedIn platform. So because LinkedIn makes their money from ads the same way Facebook and Instagram do, they want people to stay where they can serve them ads, which is on their platform. So they incentivize you to keep people on their platform by showing your native articles to more people than they would a third-party link.
Good insight. Okay. Hopefully we've convinced you that LinkedIn is something that if you're not active on it, you should get active on it. And if you're active on it, look at ways that you could be more active on it. And it's the kind of thing I always tell a story. It's like I think of LinkedIn as like I have a piggy bank and I'm putting pennies, nickels, and dimes into my piggy bank every day. And it's a customer relationship building new business tool that I keep adding those pennies, nickels, and dimes, which means I take 30 seconds to do something, 2 minutes to do something. And over time, the piggy bank, all of a sudden, there's some serious money in there that provides a return in terms of new customers or keeping current customers happy. Beth, any other thoughts on LinkedIn you want to close with?
I think that's a good way of looking at it, Mark, because it is sometimes a bit of the longer game, right? You're not going to make a new connection and then sell them that day, but that's the same as calling on a cold customer or calling on a new potential customer. You don't expect to close the sale that day. It's a relationship tool. It's absolutely an underutilized marketing and sales platform, and we really encourage you to check it out.
Yeah, there's another thing that I noticed is how many people will think about Instagram, Pinterest, even Facebook. They'll think about other social media apps as something that their customers like, right? And they do. And I think whatever's working for you, keep doing it. Okay. If Instagram works for you, keep doing it. Works for your company, Pinterest. And certainly if you have a product that has an aesthetic quality, those can be really good for reaching designers, for example. But I find that people also that go on LinkedIn are thinking about business. Even if they're a contractor, they are on LinkedIn because they want to know, how can I improve my business? If an architect is on LinkedIn, they think about, how can I improve the business of my firm? Home builders on there are thinking about, how can I be a more successful builder, not just how do I sell more homes? And so I think there's a mindset of the LinkedIn person is, and so when I see so many companies have no LinkedIn presence, I will go to their website. I will always see a Facebook and an Instagram little, like, here's our social media. And it amazes me how many times there's no LinkedIn button.
Yeah.
And I think there's a group of people of your customers that prefer to use LinkedIn. Okay. There are ones who prefer Twitter. There's ones who prefer Instagram, Facebook, but there's a group who prefers LinkedIn. And I find those are people who are they're thinking about business. Like, why is buying your product a good business decision for me? What will it help for my business? Is how the mindset I have about it. So hopefully Beth and I and Zach have helped you out, given you some things to think, more things to think about. If you're really crazy about LinkedIn, Venveo is going to have another workshop in May, a 2-day workshop on LinkedIn. And so Beth, do you want to tell us a little more about that, or how you guys, Beth and Zach, also have a fantastic podcast I recommend that you listen to. How do they find all of your stuff?
Yeah, so our next LinkedIn workshop will be Monday and Tuesday, May 18th and 19th, 2020. If you want to find out more about it, you can shoot us an email at podcast@venveo.com, and we'll make sure to get you all of the information. And we have a weekly podcast called Smarter Building Materials Marketing. Mark often makes cameo appearances. We also interview manufacturers and thought leaders from around the industry, trying to bring the most important and relevant information that we can. So we encourage you to check that out and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Great. And if you can't remember all that, if you go to just venveo.com, you can contact me, you can sign up for all that stuff and so forth. So that's another shortcut. But thanks a lot, Beth, for being on the podcast this week.
Thanks for having us, Mark. This was great.
It was good. Okay. Well, I look forward to our listeners getting your comments on what you thought about this. And be sure and send me ideas for new subjects that you would like us to cover. Have a great week. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this podcast from Mark Mitchell on building materials, sales, and marketing. We hope he gave you some fresh perspectives on how to grow your sales, and will listen to future episodes.